dude, this week I saw a notice that Google Chrome patched a new OD, so I was kind of putting it into our document listing. Patched my OD and Chrome pops up, and now I have like a Gemini button at the top right corner of my Chrome that's just like constantly in my face. I can't like get it out of my face, and now my browser, if I click on it, my browser turns blue with a light, and it's like prompting me to give it prompts.
It has a default. It also has a default key, like I think it's like Control G or something, and like this little fucking window pops up. What I think is hilarious is they're
actively saying, "Please don't use my browser for browsing. Let us do some shit for you."
Quit browsing, bro.
And I gotta pay for it.
What?
No, you don't have to. I mean, look,
Gemini
if it was
3
Gemini 3,
is only in the paid level, right?
Well, Gemini 3, I don't know, man, because like Google can't roll out a product to save its life. So like Gemini 3, like you can get it in anti-gravity for free right now. But then if you have like a paid, you're supposed to be able to have it if you have a paid account. But when you go into the Gemini thing, it's not there. And then in certain versions it is, in other ones it isn't. Then like if you get Ultra, maybe you have it. Like it's super fucking confusing. You just need to wait like 2 weeks until like it just permeates its way to all these like disjointed fucking products, man. But it's great. Gemini 3 is fucking great.
And you get it for free.
Pay for it. Can you just pay for it?
I pay for something, which was like a special offer. Special offer, $50 for 3 months of Gemini thingies. And then it has a 3, but then another one of my accounts, like, which is kind of a free account, just got an email like, hey, play now with Gemini 3 for free. And I was like, what the fuck?
What the fuck?
Like, I just paid for it.
Google keeps doing this where you're like, you think you're like, well, surely I'm paying for this thing. And then like, there was a point at which I had more models in a free account than I did in the paid ones or in the corporate ones. And I'm like, what the fuck, guys? Like, this is not how this shit works.
Good morning, everyone. This is episode 73 of the Three Buddy Problem. Hanging out with my buddies Juanito and Costin on a week when Google shipped Gemini 3. I know we have been grumbling at all about some of the implementations and some of the ways Google is constantly nudging us into this. The bigger question is, how good is Gemini 3? I don't want to turn this into an AI episode either. I'm fucking bored with all the AI shit.
Every episode's an AI episode, man. Gemini 3 is fucking awesome.
Did you get to play with it for real?
It's good. It's good, yeah.
It's so
What's
good.
What's the use case that you've used it for that is better than?
So I have been playing with anti-gravity, which is it's Google's version of Windsurf. Remember, they like took the Windsurf people and whatever. So they came out with a kind of their own version of Windsurf, of an IDE.
For the audience, give us a little bit of background on what this.
So it's essentially it's an IDE. It's a development environment. It's like it's a Visual Studio Code fork with like a nice little
for vibe coding.
Yeah, it's sort of like a agentic sort of version of whatever Visual Studio Code. And that said, if you use it right now, because they're trying to push it, they let you use Gemini 3 for free. And the results are frankly phenomenal. Like Gemini 3 is just, first of all, the responses are super fucking fast. They're generally pretty accurate. It's doing search without like pushing back, which is nice, right? It being a Google product. And I say that because a lot of other models, like you can tell these companies don't want to pay for the API requests or something, or they're not good at tool use. Like they just won't search when they should. And then the results are just fucking great. Like it's just like sitting there doing long tasks very quickly, very effectively. So it's like set up this whole
and comp doesn't do this. What I mean is, isn't Cloud already doing this? Isn't ChatGPT already doing this? Is it better than comp?
It's much better than. So how do I put it? Right, like I've been doing this with Anthropic models, and I've tried doing it with like ChatGPT, Codex High models, and yes, you can get there. But the amount of times that it's like, well, you asked it to do a thing and it didn't do it quite right, or there's a bug, and then you end up like kind of wasting a shit ton of time trying to debug this bug that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And then the context window runs out, and then the thing stops, like, it doesn't debug it right, and you end up like halfway through the wrong path, and just like everything's kind of broken. That happens. It used to happen a fair amount. It does not happen with Gemini 3, not in my experience. So like you genuinely can sit there and be like, implement auth, do this thing, and then like walk away, come back and be like, it's fucking done, and it's done quickly. It's impressive. Like I genuinely, I'm ready to shill for Gemini 3 is all I'm saying.
Costin, your response to these things is basically, are you going to do what I ask you to do? How woke is it? You mentioned at the top that Gemini 3 was also impressive. What impressed you, and what are you getting from Gemini 3 you're not already getting somewhere else?
So I played a bit with all these new models. I think that first Elon Musk announced Grok 4.1 was the top of the leaderboard on LM Arena. He was there, I think, only for 1 day or something like this, and then Google came with Gemini 3, which took the first place. So actually, I spent
Took the first place where?
In the LM Arena, lmarena.ai. You can go. By the way, I spent like a few hours on this website asking all the school computer malware questions to different models, and then you get the option to rate the answers, and then you see which model was which. And at least based on this old school, Gemini 3 was like killing, was absolutely awesome. Asking like really obscure questions, for instance, like who first identified Stuxnet and where, things like that. And you have to know there was Sergei Ulasin at the wedding and things like that. And old school questions about old school malware. And Gemini 3, it was pretty good. And I like how they use this ELO system that people use in chess. If you don't know it, it basically rates the probability that you will defeat an opponent based on your ELO rating and the opponent's ELO rating. So every time you win, you get a bit more ELO points. And by the way, in chess, it's all about ELO points. Like who's got the biggest ELO points? Like how do you get more? How do you cheat the system to play weaker players so you can take their ELO points and things like that?
Chess is becoming like magic money with all the cheating.
Yeah, Gemini 3 Pro has a score of 1495 ELO points on this LM Arena, and Grok 4 is 1481. So 1495 versus 1481. I played a bit also. I did some Rust coding over the week with all these different models. Grok failed me, sadly. Like it was pretty good in development to kickstart my project, but it got to a point where it was just entering a loop where nothing would work. Like fix this. It would just loop between like 4 or 5 different errors. And then I just took the whole code. I gave it to Gemini. I said, please fix it. And it fixed it, and it just ran. It was correct. Like the right function calls, everything. Even offered to optimize it for GPUs. And
Jesus
I was
Christ.
impressed.
Is it going to translate Chinese documents for you?
It did. And actually, even look, even ChatGPT 5.1 had no issues anymore translating Chinese, translating Russian. Previously, I mentioned about my experiences trying to translate some CN-CERT documents or Russian government-related laws, which just plain refused because for some
national
stupid
security
reasons.
I love that that's what you mean by the woke train. Like it's such a different discussion than what we're having in the US, but it's like
that's our reference to woke. Wokeness is
I just gotta say that because it's like that's a very different thing than what's happening in these like political discussions in the US, or it's like, it's a very different dog whistle, whereas here we're like, this fucking model won't translate a Chinese blog because it thinks it's like a national security problem. We're like, yeah, the guardrails might be like a little too tight here. Yeah,
we have like a new funny test which you can all try at home, by the way. This is crazy. Just take a QR code, find a QR code, a photo of a QR code, drop it in your favorite LLM, and ask to give you the URL for that QR code if the QR code is of an URL. And it's just crazy. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, but like
I've never done that.
Makes no sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, what the hell?
All right, and that's homework for the folks.
Try
It
with
doesn't know what
everything.
to do. It doesn't know what to do with like the visual stuff. It really, you can tell there's like a
Yeah.
big disconnect there. It's
It's
Yeah, it
also
doesn't
very, very
understand. Like,
good. It's also very good at some of these Bellingcat me games that we play where you
Oh,
just kind
yeah.
of throw in an image of
Yeah.
a random place and it'll freaking like even if it doesn't know, it'll guess pretty accurately. That's some of the surveillance systems. If this is what the public models are doing, I mean, could you imagine what some of the more private ones are doing around surveillance?
What the Chinese are
This
doing, you
was
mean?
this is also the week of CyberWarCon. Juanito, did you made it out to Virginia? It was in Virginia.
I made it out to say hi to folks. I didn't,
Catch a
I'll be
single
honest.
talk?
No, not a single fucking talk. It took me an hour and a half to get from the front door to like picking up my badge. So, and it was
Oh, no.
lunch by then. So it just, but it was great to see everybody. It was a wonderful, it was a wonderful time.
Costin was
I think
taking
Costin
notes.
saw
Costin
more
was
talks.
watching. Costin was watching the live stream. First of all, did you catch the Dmitry Alperovich keynote?
I did. Well, at first it didn't work because I was using Firefox, and for some reason it didn't work in
Wow.
Firefox.
Fucking
And
hipster.
I thought that the stream didn't start, and then I said like maybe I should try it in Chrome, and in Chrome it works. So I was like,
Did
so
you
I
ask
missed the
Gemini
beginning
I
to
understand.
solve it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I understand Dima was talking a little bit about the malware naming mess and the malware naming conventions that we've kind of ranted at length in this show. You got to like, what was his takeaway?
I love the bit of history. So he went a bit through the history of how he got to name things, going back to Shady Rat, I think, and like really old school Operation Aurora time or things, and then he explained like what is the situation nowadays, which is a bit messy, and he proposed pretty much ended his talk with a new proposal in which he suggests to use existing solid attribution more prominently. And his example here for sandworm was to call it GRU sandworm, and then like whatever tool. To me, it seemed like a bit strange. So I think that actually using attribution and piggybacking on attribution in a name is not the way to go. I very much like the Mandian scheme now that uses number. It's my favorite nowadays. And Dimitri actually said the opposite. He said that he doesn't like numbers. He cannot remember which country is APT 44 or APT 45 or APT 37. Is it North Korea? Is it Russia? You can't tell it from the name. But in my opinion, the name shouldn't necessarily say which country it is. But
wait, what was his argument for doing this? Like, why does he want this?
Well, because first of all, it seemed like some people made fun of his scheme, which was the one with the pandas, like the cozy bear, with deep panda, things like that. So he
went through the history of his
clip.
CrowdStrike naming of some of these things.
Yeah, and there were like news flashes where people were laughing that the Russians hacked into the DNC and was Cozy Bear, and they were like laughing, which was stupid in my opinion of the news flash guys to do that. But nevertheless, he said you need like a stronger naming scheme, one that immediately points the blame. So it's GRU sandworm. It's like nothing cozy or fancy or tiny or something like that.
What would you have named
sandworm.
In this new structure? What would the equation group be?
Oh, that's blow under the belt. I don't know.
NSA equation group, and then we could have all been wrong the entire time.
NSA.
That's the thing,
PAO.
right? Because the argument we make for not doing that is because you don't want to be wrong, or you don't want to be like you don't want to jump and tie this thing. That's why we get into the clustering and we get into like some of the intricacies of this. I didn't watch the keynote, so I don't want to put past any sort of judgment. I was just surprised to see some commentary on the naming scheme that he was recommending, being a lot more aggressive around attributing specific threats to specific people.
I mean, I understand, and I haven't seen the talk. I think this is an argument we have had before, right? Like with Dima, where it's like it's not like we don't kind of understand the point. I think
what's the point he's making? Like, what's his argument?
Well, I think the sense I get don't let me put words in his mouth, but the sense I get is that he would like to see us be less pussyfooting about pointing the finger in the direction of known attributed orgs when it comes to these attacks. And I think that's a valid point. But where I disagree with Dimitri is in the approach. I don't think the names are the problem. I think the problem is corporate fecklessness and our unwillingness to just be like, you know, that's the Russians, right? Like that's the GRU, and you can call it whatever the fuck you want, but that's the GRU. And I get that like baking things into the name helps kind of spread some of that message, but the cases where we have such solid attribution that it's silly that we're not just like coming out and saying it straight up, they're few and far between compared to the amount of APTs that we deal with. Whereas I think the inflexibility that comes with naming something when you made a fucking mistake, it's just too much. Like I really don't think this is the right. I don't think the name is where you're gonna fix that. I agree with Dimitri. I can't remember what the numbers are. Like I think I'm pretty good about remembering what the I think I'm pretty decent at remembering like what an APT is, where it came from, and all these details about the shit that like we researched. But like I cannot, my mind for the life of me cannot do like 37 versus 45 or like whatever. Like numbers wise, it doesn't work. But I think that there's a range of options in between having like an arbitrary cryptonym and having a number designation, and then having some kind of bullshit where you're baking the actual attribution into the name. And I just can't agree with that part. And I'll say that as somebody who's fallible and makes mistakes. Like I'll make a mistake. We can start something and we'll say, hey, we thought this was the Russians. And you go and you rush something out, and then a week later, or somebody else gives you more information, you figure out it's the Chinese, and then what the fuck do you do? Like you can't go and newsflash, Cozy Bear is actually Cozy Panda. Like it just doesn't fucking work, You can't.
Justin, who is APT 44?
Ooh,
do an APT quiz. You're like, okay, 12, 10, 45, 37, right? I can't do that
but
shit.
You like the naming convention because it's the opposite of what Dima is asking for.
I like it because it's it's simple on one hand, and it doesn't imply attribution. I think again, baking attribution into the threat actor's name is a mistake, and that's why I like this scheme, which is very simple, based on numbers. It's very clear. Like Mandiant, whenever they publish a new name, they have like a serious blog, and in which they detail like what that is, IOX, and so on. So for me, this is the preferable scheme, if you ask me again.
Are you also a big fan of Mandiant's way of like doing the UNC clustering and taking it long time before it graduates to being an actual APT number?
I can't say I'm a big fan of the UNCs in the sense that I feel that they should probably have more of those APTs. I mean, there's like some things which have been around for a very long time and they're still an UNC. And I mean, yeah. And I remember the explanation in the past was that they don't have enough data. They don't actually see that. Their customers don't see that. So for them, it was like really important that their customers actually get hit by that particular actor. But nowadays, I mean, with Google's reach and visibility, I think that they should definitely graduate more UNCs into the APT or FIN scheme, and have like more finalized products, naming scheme products.
We're like, there's so many different ways that like we're getting into very particular issues with very particular ways of doing things. I would take a minute to just kind of praise Mandiant's school of doing things in a particular way, which is to say, I think Mandiant, there's people who wanted to pretend they were intelligence agencies, and then there's people who tried to act like the up to the standard of what an intelligence agency would do. And I think Mandiant tried to act up to the standard, maybe even a little too much, but they really went at it, which is just like, think about what Mandiant is like, right? You've got you obviously have a bunch of very smart researchers, but you also had a lot of consultants, and you had a lot of people who were just never, like you rolled in, you're good at IR, and that doesn't mean that you remember every APT number and name. And maybe you've never done that kind of research, and you need to competently be able to speak to something. And what the Mandiant folk came up with from the days of Vizzy and some of these other folks was a way to not just kind of substantiate what they were looking at and codify it in like a graph database, with Nucleus, which now, Synapse, um, but also to have a certain degree of like standardization and like, well, when does something become an APT? When does something graduate? When is something good enough to like call it this or that? Um, they, in some ways, I think what Kosten's speaking to about not graduating enough things is, well, I think your standards maybe got a little too out of hand, a little too rigorous in some ways, right? When Turla doesn't get an APT number because what? Like it's been around for 20 fucking years. Like what are you missing, right? Like what's missing? I think something's wrong with your system, but I think having that system puts them at a level of rigor, of analytical rigor that most other threat intel producers have never aspired to. And in that, I think it's quite admirable, right? It being able to substantiate why you say this, why you claim this, based on what, and then up to what degree will that put you somewhere. And in that, look, if their graduation scheme is not that great, but that just means that everything's stuck in Unk land. It's still more
Yeah, it feels
accurate to
muddier
live in
than
Unk
anything. Yeah.
land. No.
The Unk land feels
It's more.
muddier to me.
Unkland sucks in that it's not distinct enough to be able to make, talking head, uh, security evangelisty, statements about. Like nobody wants to go out and talk about Unk 4365, right, over and over, but it's still better than somebody said this is, APT roaring panda, and then you have to live with that bad assessment forever and ever once you
Right.
realize that no, this Unk is actually just a part of this other thing, or no, it's not Chinese at all, right? Like that's having to codify mistakes that no company ever comes out and goes, we were super fucking wrong about everything we hyped up last week, right? Like nobody says that.
Mm.
So to some degree, I'll take the muddiness of the Unks for a little longer than just a ton of APTs that are not quite right.
Another thought that someone else raised in the LabsCon chat in response to the DEMA talk was how many companies are actually capable of this level of attribution to go into depth and know that this would be GRU something, right? It's just a handful of companies with the level of depth that Juanito just talked about at Mandiant. I mean, how many companies do you trust that they say GRU and you'll be like, yeah, that's it, right? Very few.
No companies. Only nation states or governments or law enforcement. I think this is what Dimitri was also saying that in the talk, that if solid attribution is available, like from your government, from the US government, whatever, then use it. Otherwise, yeah, they were like else, and I was thinking like, what if you else? Like, how do you call it? You still end up with APT 49 or things like that.
Right.
The scenarios where solid attribution is available are just few and far between. And I think part of that is also like, I think even those discussions about the GRU are for a long period of time, we may have known it was the GRU, but we didn't have any granularity as to like, is this a contractor with the GRU? Is it the GRU in this particular unit? And then like true to form, right? Like this is an Intel problem as old as time. They reshuffled 4 years later, 3 years later, they take all of the office numbers and names, the MUCDs, whatever, and like they just switch them. And then you go, oh, okay, well, that was GRU unit, blah, blah, blah. And now it's what? And like those dudes just like, they didn't even switch offices. Somebody just came and like put a different fucking,
sticker
plaque
on
the front door. But we no longer have a clear sense of that. And I think the issue we're having here is that I wrote about this in like 2018, I think, that paper of Draw Me Like One of Your French APTs. Like the whole point was this is way too static. The subject of study is dynamic. The clusterings change, they come, they go, they fray. Our visibility makes that an even more of like this weird parallax view into like what the thing actually is. And then we want to slap these forever names on it, and we want to make associations that are lasting and enduring. And that's just not the way these things work. It's just not. That cluster of operations is going to look like something totally different next week. And then you go back and you go, is this still the same dudes? Is it the same unit? It's the same, maybe, we might feel confident it's the same tasking organization, but we're not in a position to make these sorts of attribution claims the way that we'd like to.
Another talk at CYBERWARCON, and shout out to Erica and John Hultquist and the guys who put together that conference. The agenda was pretty strong. Another talk was our friend Ivan, our ex-former colleague, now at Meta, on another one of these APT numbers, APT 29. Costin, you watched this talk and flagged it as something that was super interesting. What did we learn here?
I liked it, and I like to see the fact that Ivan is still doing the hard lifting, and especially with Meta, nowadays publishing more about influence operations, disinformations, things like that. It was good to see that they still support research into real APT attacks. APT 29 in this case is what he was talking about. And to me, it seemed like a very good, very thorough overview of these attacks by APT 29, in which they leverage Android malware, like this variant of the Octo2 family, which was previously used by financially motivated actors, but here repurposed, improved, modified a bit by APT 29.
That's Russian, right?
Russian Nexus, APT 29, right?
SVR,
SVR APT 29, maybe, sort of, kinda.
Yeah, SVR cozy
in the
beer.
demon naming scheme.
What the fuck is APT 29 in this day and age, right? APT 29 is something we like that got labeled 6-7 years ago. The SVR isn't the same organization. Sorry, Kostin, keep.
No, you're absolutely right, and this is, by the way, one of the things that we observed over the years. And sometimes people said, this is APT 29 from the beginning to end. This is Sandworm from the beginning to end, and we were like, I'm not entirely sure. To me, it feels like it's different subgroups within maybe the same organization. Like the guys with the black energy and the guys with the gray energy are maybe not exactly the same subgroup that were leveraging what we used to call the Hades attacks, which was like the Pyeongchang Olympics, things like that, and or NotPetya, and things like that. So it's always like a question of how much you want to compress under the same umbrella. Do you want to put everything under the same umbrella, or do you want to split them? So it's like APT 29.1, APT 29.2.
Jesus.
Maybe it's not a bad idea. I don't know. You can put even the year, like APT 29.2024.1, something like that.
When is this harmonization effort going to take root to get rid of all of this? I remember Microsoft started a whole thing that we were going to harmonize, and everyone was going to know, and everyone was going to sign on, and I had high hopes.
Enough to remember when Microsoft was using the periodic table for naming threat actors.
Oh, yeah. Those were good days.
Uranium, for instance. Yeah.
One other thing from CyberWarCon I wanted to flag was last week we panned the Amazon Threat Intel team for its CISO publishing a report, a Threat Intel report talking about zero-day usage, and we got nothing, no IOCs. We kind of panned them. I got a response from, I think it was David Oxley, is his name?
Yeah.
Shout out to the listener who pinged me to say, hey, we're listening. I got you. And then the Threat Intel team went to CyberWarCon to talk about an Iranian cyber threat group, Imperial Kitten Muddy Water, using cyber espionage to enable kinetic strikes by Iran and proxies like the Houthis. Pretty significant talk. Followed up with a blog that included IOCs and basically said, guys, yeah, I know how it goes. Remember, we were talking about this last week. The blog is still written by the CISO. Less CISO, more IOCs, but we did get IOCs. Costin, did you get a chance to watch this talk?
I'm unfortunately I did not. I'm afraid I did not. By the way, some of the talks were actually a bit later in the day, and I wasn't like feeling very well. I had a bit of fever, so I went to bed early. So I was hoping that I can watch them later, but sadly, I can't find any way to rewatch the talks. So hopefully they'll publish them somewhere for the people
Did
who
you
pay
pay
the
for
ticket
did you pay
to see
for
it.
the live stream?
I did, absolutely.
Once it live is done, you don't get access on demand?
Once it's done, it's done. Now
Oh,
I was hoping I can
They
go
said
back,
live.
refresh, and rewatch it. So
They
that's a
said
now
bummer.
live. They told
I
you it
was
was
like
live.
very sorry I didn't record it somehow. I was thinking I should have recorded it so I can just watch it later when I feel a bit better. But yeah, sure, maybe John can provide some kind of recordings to the people who bought the ticket.
I just wanted to
Yes,
say
I
shout
think
out to the Amazon Threat Intel team. There are guys on the team that know that they want to do better things, and I think some of Costin's bullying does help them go back to their superiors to say, hey, look, Costin is bullying us.
I'm not
well,
bullying anyone. Only
they
a lot
did,
of
and
love.
they credited the researchers at the end of the blog. Like I think it was obviously it's a lot better. So I appreciate it, and David Oxley did reach out and uh, look. I think it's great. I think in any position, if Costin's bullying people and that makes it so that they can do better output, it sounds great to me. Also, the claims about this talk, like I do want to watch the video because it's actually quite interesting, right? Like you are talking, this is the kind of thing that I think is appropriate for a conference called CyberWarCon, to say that like you've got folks who are doing cyber attacks to better coordinate kinetic strikes and things that we've watched go down over the past few years. It's fascinating. So I hope this is the beginning of a lot more of this kind of thing from Amazon. We want to talk about who has visibility into things like that. Amazon does, Google does, right? Like Microsoft. These are the organizations that are in a position to do better attribution than we are. They just seldom do it, like because of
when you're
all the
talking about
politicking and whatnot.
When you're talking about bridging cyber and kinetic, they actually presented two case studies. One on hacking into an automatic identification system platform, gaining access to critical infrastructure, and using that kind of access to look at maritime movements of vessels and that kind of thing. We've seen it with documented the Russians in the Ukraine as well, hacking into train schedules and hacking into train CCTV cameras to see where weapon systems were moving. So it's happening all over the world. We have to assume that this kind of cyber supporting kinetic is now normal operating procedure, right, Costin? Did you get a chance to read this blog that they put out to the IOCs?
I did, and of course there were like previous blogs. If you remember, we even discussed it in a previous episode. The fact that these Iranian groups were leveraging CCTV feeds. So I did, and there are IOCs in there, which is it makes me happy. I put them through my systems before you ask.
They're okay.
So
Amazon is becoming okay in your book.
Absolutely very, very, very okay. And I was thinking that it's kind of standard in the sense that even in other regions, not necessarily when it comes to the Iran, Israel, and the Middle East and the conflict which we covered in June back this year
with Hamid, yeah.
Yeah, but also in Ukraine, I think cyber warfare matters a lot in shaping these operations and into things like knowing which targets to hit very precisely, knowing how to fly your drone, avoiding anti-drone equipment, knowing when to hit, so just to make sure that whatever target you are hitting is fully loaded with explosives, or like just the perfect moment when there's no people in there, so to reduce collateral victims. If you remember some of the old predatory Sparrow operations, when they actually targeted this steel forge, trying to minimize the physical impact on people's life. So I think, it's very important and related to nowadays warfare, like it's an integral part of that.
You mentioned, I interrupted you right when you were saying I put it into my system. You put this IOX into TLP Black. What happened?
Well, first of all, what is TLP Black? TLP Black is the company that me together with a couple of friends, we started last year in June. So we've been working on putting together a number of threat intelligence kind of niche services, if you want. We focus on quality, so that matters a lot because we know that people in this field, they can smell bullshit from afar. So we didn't want to, some companies just put a website up announcing something, they get some external investments, and eventually there's some product, but it kind of disappoints. So we took the other route. We didn't have a website until last week, so we only brought the website on Monday last week, which is tlpblack.net. And our threat intelligence platform, which combines passive DNS with a bit of network IOCs, with Yara rules, scanning, and IP reputation, it essentially allows you to improve your understanding of cyber operations. So what I did in this case, I went through the IOCs provided by Amazon. I put them in the system and tried to understand a bit if there's additional infrastructure related to this, which is pretty much what everybody does nowadays. And I think that AI also plays a very important role there, in the sense you can speed up and automate correlation a lot faster. I think that AI can bring a lot of advantage, and many people ask, why don't you just go full blown AI? And in our opinion, we think you need to use AI with a bit of human touch. You need to get a bit of human touch into the output to make sure that it's not hallucinations, that it's relevant, and it actually makes sense to scan for that. So I don't know if I answered your question, but overall, was good to see some more data from the Amazon. I think we lost Ryan.
Yeah,
for
this
a
is
moment.
an unusual occurrence.
This
Do we end
happens
up just
very
getting a
rarely.
bunch of? He gets so frustrated. Do we get a? Did we just basically end up with a bunch of like Amazon hosted VPSs as the IOCs? Right.
Yeah, not always, not always. And actually, I was wondering. It's funny that nowadays, like some of the more shady APT groups, they get this kind of hosting from shady providers with Bitcoin, Monero payments, whatever. While the high-end nation groups, they just set up a front company which with a bank account, and they buy like their CNC infrastructure from Amazon, from Microsoft, from DigitalOcean. So sometimes it's like funny to notice this discrepancy between high end and low end IPT groups and how they buy infrastructure. Welcome back, Ryan.
Thank you. I don't know what I missed. I wanted to just wrap up this Amazon CyberWarCon presentation by giving a shout out directly to the researchers. David Magnotti, Principal Engineer, and Dilshad Othman, Senior Threat Intelligence Engineer, both from the Amazon Threat Intelligence team. The authors would like to also thank U.S. Central Command for their transparency in reporting military activities and acknowledge the ongoing support of customers and partners in these critical investigations. So pretty significant stuff there, and happy that Amazon allowed them to go do this talk and we can get some sort of visibility into these things. Any last words from you, Juanito?
I mean, look, man, I just hope to see more of it, right? Like the amount of stuff that Amazon has got to be seeing is I can only imagine is phenomenal, just from the sheer size of this place and everything that it touches and everything that traverses through them. So yeah, here's hoping to hear more from our friends, more blogs from our CISO friend, and as long as they have IOCs, we're here for it.
Good. We also got news this week from reporting out of Bloomberg on a company called 20, TWENTY 20, or XX, named after British counterintelligence operations during World War II, the double cross system. Cyber warfare startup that has already said its Nabs contracts to give U.S. military hackers AI tools. Bloomberg has some reporting on this startup. I believe they raised $75 million and got some U.S. gov contracts. I bring this up because, Costin, on Twitter last week, I believe I saw a tweet from you that asked, What does an offensive cybersecurity,
Legitimate.
what does a legitimate kind of accepted offensive cybersecurity company look like? And it feels very much along with the Winona, Dr. Bratter's paper, some of the agitation around stuff. It feels like we're heading in a direction of encouraging private sector enterprise to enter the offensive security space. And now we have a startup funded with some former military hackers, cybersecurity professionals, helping the Pentagon with some AI things. Two things. What was the response to your tweet? Did you get any good feel for what a legitimate offensive cybersecurity company would look like? And is the creation of startups and venture capital money starting to flow here a signal of maybe more of these to come?
I think that people didn't take that very seriously because I didn't get too many answers. And to me, it seemed interesting in the context that also in the news, I saw another story about an Israeli startup doing offensive AI automated offensive security work. We just got some nice funding package, and we have this as well. Which has funding from InQtel, if I remember correctly, and a few other companies. And I was thinking, yeah, like there should be some kind of a model, or people maybe, I don't know, should be able to describe at least how a legitimate cyber offensive company should look like. And in my mind, what
Define
legitimate means. Yeah,
because
like
they're
in
all
my
legitimate.
mind. No, like let me tell you what legitimate means. In my mind, legitimate means that they don't sell to just everyone, like some companies did in the past. They were selling to anyone with money, like any country in the world with money, and that there's no corruption involved. Again, there were like some of these companies involved in corruption scandals, and one that is transparent and audited in the sense that they publish a report in which they say, yeah, we helped target 500 terrorists and 1,000 child pedophiles and 2,000 drug dealers. Like, this is transparency.
Success story transparency document.
Like saying nothing, it only adds to the shady nature of this business. It means like we probably target some journalists as well, and you probably target some freedom fighters, and you probably targeted some activists and maybe some security researchers as well, even if they were from unfriendly countries. And I was looking here, it said to conduct offensive operations against American adversaries. And I was thinking like, whoa, does that mean like adversaries in America? Like within America? What does it mean? Is it like to target people inside the US, or is it like against adversaries to America or something like that? And I genuinely hope, for your sake, that they mean outside America, not within America.
Juanito,
Because there are like also talks and discussions about the government buying software for use internally, for like internal investigations. So that's always the issue, in my opinion.
Juanito, how can we get a legitimate company with all those factors that he listed there? There's no way you can get a company that we're not going to sell here because we don't care about profits. Once venture capital get into it and it's driven by like ARR and how do we get to our next funding round and what kind of markers we have to get to our next funding round, you get into I have to sell here and I have to sell here and I have to create a business, create extra revenue streams here and there. Is there possibility that it's coming. It feels like this gray zone is coming. It feels like there's a groundswell of opinion and pushing for some sort of, let's put some order around it. Let's put some cleanliness. Let's put some legal guardrails. Where do you see this going?
Well, I mean, I think we've been seeing this particular thing coming for a while. We've been talking about it on the podcast for a while. I was telling you, like, guys, like this is a thing. It's almost like this set expectation here in DC that like this is going to change and the floodgates are going to open, and you can see it, right? Like companies like this, that 20 is the one that like I keep hearing about the most. Have just sort of they're kind of seizing upon this perception that we're going to have this sudden opening of the floodgates where you can have these contractors involved. And look, it's sort of what you're getting in some of these calls from like some of Winona's papers and a lot of discussions that people have been having around this. So it's not like it's entirely unexpected. It's not like it's entirely unwanted. But the question that you're posing about it being
even possible.
The legitimate, right? Like when we start trying to talk about like legitimacy in this situation, it's a much more complicated discussion to be had, because really what we're talking about is what does it mean from the perspective of a company with its own sort of private ownership, with its own sort of lack of transparency, and sort of the kind of private structures that are created to avoid transparency in general, right? Like NDAs and contractual obligations that say, well, this company can't speak about X, Y, and Z. And then what does it mean from the perspective of having oversight? Like, I think the complexities here become greater and greater when VCs are involved, but I think they become greatest when you are selling to multiple countries. And so if you tell me that it's a private company, but it only serves one country, for example, or like, look, the conversations we kept having around Mark Dowd's company and companies like, sorry, my mind's going really blank today on a lot of the specific names. But like when we talk about like
Trenchant
Azimuth and Trenchant and so on, right? Like part of the benefit there was like you're sticking to Five Eyes. And at the end of the day, it's not that we like Five Eyes better than the other ones and therefore that's okay, but rather you're sticking to countries that have a set regulatory oversight regime and some kind of legal framework. Part of the egregiousness of companies like Hacking Team and others that were pretending to be super hyper legitimate is, you only sell to quote unquote governments, and sometimes they couldn't even identify whether they were talking to the right government or government representatives or not. But then you're also selling the countries that either have no legal regime for managing wiretapping and cyber operations, or it's straight up illegal, right? Like what we figured out.
Yeah, this guy wants transparency papers.
Well, look, my point is, if you want to sell, like there is a version of this where you can have transparency. Moreover, I will make the kind of bizarre argument that there's a difference between serving these sorts of cyber operations for law enforcement versus intelligence operations. There is a big difference there. And when it comes to law enforcement, I think you have to have transparency, because at the end of the day, if you're telling me that what you're doing is meant to end up in a court of law and it's meant to have evidentiary standard, then doing everything in the dark and in covertness, and we don't know how you did it, and we don't know how the malware works, and we don't know, like, that's just a recipe for evidentiary tampering or an inability to present evidence in court. So if you're doing it for law enforcement, there needs to be a very different standard than if you're doing it for supplying the intelligence community. Like right there and then, I would draw like a big line in the sand. And I don't think I'm the first person to do it. I think when you first had discussions about like, what was it, like Bundestrojaner by the CCC, the Chaos Computing Club, like a lot of the discussion was like, well, what is it going to look like to know how often the tools were used and where were they used and what were they used for? Like, there's no reason you can't have that discussion when it's not a covert operation, but simply something that needs to be protected as to its mechanisms.
20 is described as the first purely cyber warfare startup to develop AI tools for military hackers. That's a lot of hooey-fooey there. They declined to discuss. They declined to discuss it with Bloomberg, but I mean, there's a lot of like all of this AI throw-in is just gobbledygook, in my opinion. I don't know.
It's not, though. I do like the idea of this caffeinated capital. I feel like the right people are getting involved in this caffeinated.
The company has secured
funding.
a 38 million Series A funding led by San Francisco-based Caffeinated Capital. Caffeinated Capital invested 26 million in the round. So somebody's
It's the first cool
all
sounding
jazzed up.
VC we've
I
dealt
agree.
with here. You know, let's have a conversation. Caffeinated Capital, TLP Black investment, right? Look,
I want to touch on sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, like, look, I am really interested in seeing what happens here, right? Like, there's a discussion, there's all kinds of discussions that have been had about the ecosystem around cyber operations, what's allowed and what's not allowed. Are these guys going to run their own ops, or are they just building components? If they're just building components, then that's not that different than what we've had in the past necessarily. But you know, if they're just building tooling, then what we could be looking at is a Anduril style, somebody coming out of nowhere and punching above their weight against the primes. And you don't have, you know, it's not Lockheed and BAE and whatever. It's, you know, this new player with new tech. And that sounds interesting to me.
Right.
If what we're talking about is they're going to be doing their own ops and whatever, and all these like otherwise illegal activities and all that kind of shit, then I'm also fascinated and really interested in seeing what they do and how they do it, and how the
How they
government,
operate.
well, yeah, how the government adapts to enable these operations. To dude, even the packaging. Like, I would kill to see a contract or a brochure that tells me how these guys are packaging what they're selling. Because think about it from the perspective of like a procurement officer, right? Like, what are we paying these people for? And like, not only is it legal, is it not legal, but like, how do we know they ran the operation? How do we know they only went as far as they said they were going to go? How do we know that they did what they said they were going to do? How do we know that they went into the boxes they said they were going to go into? How do we know that the operation they designed is intended or had a chance of having the effects they said that it would have? And how do we know if those effects actually happened or not? Right? Like, there's a lot of complex things to discuss once you are not running this shit in house, and you have to say, like, what did we get for our money? What does it look like to fail in good faith? Right? They tried, but they couldn't accomplish the effect, but they did make it into those boxes, right? Like, there's a lot of complexities here that I'm really curious to see how the, you know, quote unquote free market approach to this is going to tackle.
Speaking of hacking into shit, Fortinet OD. We got two notices from Fortinet this week. One was acknowledgement of an OD, and then they updated their advisory to add a second CVE saying this was also exploited in the wild. Fortinet's web application firewall designed to protect web applications and API from attack. So this is a security solution, again, like a lot of the Ivantis and the others that we've talked about at length. We got new Fortinet OD in the wild here. Did you get a chance, Costin, at all to look at this?
Only briefly, and I didn't see any like serious indicators, like just the general description
who's
of
hitting
this.
these things?
Who's what?
Who's hitting these boxes? Who's hitting
Who
these
isn't
web
hitting these
application
Who
firewalls?
isn't? Yeah. Even like Juan's cats. If Juan's three
Hey,
cats and
where
my
is it?
two cats, like between ourselves, we have 5 cats. The only security podcast in the world with 5 cats. That's us.
There you
Like
go.
and
That's
subscribe.
Brand
They can
that
all
shit.
pop these
Yeah.
boxes.
Even our cats are hitting these boxes for sure.
No, I mean, when we kid about that stuff, but we talk about burning OD is not something people do. In these cases, they're willing to. I mean, like, who do we think is behind this? Who are the targets? Do we know anything at all beyond what just Fortinet tells people to go patch?
Yeah, unfortunately, there isn't much available, at least for now. It would be nice, of course, to get more information. I would probably look at the usual suspects. It's probably unlikely for this to be cyber criminals. It's more likely for this to be some nation state, one of the groups which specialize in targeting network appliances for the purpose of initial access, simply because they're unmonitored, they have no security solutions. They have like the security mitigations of the 90s, things like, not even the most basic security mitigations that modern compilers have. and that makes them like very, very attractive targets. I know a lot of groups like to target network edge devices and just sit there and watch the traffic for months in a row, looking for the bit that allows them to silently access the inside infrastructure, be it like some kind of NTLM hash, which gets leaked by accident, or like an administrator password or email account. So it can be super, super lucrative to sit on these network edge devices and just watch the traffic, nothing else. You don't have to rush. You don't have to push inside the network. Just wait and collect information and exploit it when it becomes available.
And there are no security solutions for these security solutions, right? I mean, this is some of the things we've talked ad nauseum on the podcast. I don't know what new there is to add here.
At this point, I'm glad we can just laugh. I'm happy we just laugh, right?
I mean, we laugh, but these are like real organizations that are connected to critical infrastructure, and there's no visibility.
Oh yeah, we're all gonna
there's
fucking
no inspectability.
die, but at least it's funny, right? Like we're
Speaking
screwed.
of funny,
Like,
let's move on to
we're fucked, but it's funny.
It's a terrible take.
Like,
we
we're
also
here
got.
for that.
I started the show. I started the show grumbling about my my Gemini
Google
addition
Chrome.
to Chrome. I just got a thing says I just opened the Chrome. I just opened the Chrome advisory on this new. Google is aware that an exploit for CVE 2025-13223 exists in the wild, and I just got a tag there at the top of Gemini saying "Ask about this page" with a big question mark. Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to click and ask about this page. Anyway, the other thing to patch is if you're running Chrome anywhere, just make sure you Chrome will prompt you to patch. Please patch. There's this ODE in Chrome. Google acknowledging has been exploited in the wild. And just another note here. It's a second high-risk CVE patched in this Chrome that was reported by Google Big Sleep on October 9th. So they're actually acknowledging Big Sleep for CVE, something that's Aardvark isn't doing, I might add.
It
Costin,
looks
you
like
said
you're
don't use
trying
Chrome at all.
to understand the Chrome ODE. Would you like help with that? Like,
I use Chrome to watch CYBERWARCON, right? Like typically, I don't use Chrome in my everyday life. I try to stay away from that, and I think I said the reason many times. The fact that they bundle the ESET engine inside for Windows, maybe I don't know for other platforms as well. To me, it's a risk factor because you don't know what the engine does, like the behavior. Does it send the samples that you have? Does it send it telemetry? So all this uncertainty is like not.
So
my
you're
friend.
saying these engines have the ability to do that?
I'm saying there's bundle ESET, like scan engine, antivirus engine into Chrome, and yeah,
And
this Google has been very transparent, and this is
that's
my
your
worry.
blocker.
It's my blocker, and this is why I don't use Chrome itself. I do use other browsers that leverage Chromium. So that is probably okay in my book, as long as they don't come with an antivirus engine. And it's like this is my frustration with almost everything nowadays, that you need something simple, but you get shoved down the throat like 100 other things you don't really need. So like you install Windows and it comes with OneDrive, Skype, Teams, Office 365, Copilot, Recall, like all these things that I don't need. I don't want those things. I just want like something really simple that does its job, and if I want something additional, I will decide if I need that additional thing.
And you can't turn off the ESET engine, right? It's built in there. You have no control over that at all.
I couldn't find a way, and I wouldn't risk it because like these things typically have a talent of turning themselves back on randomly. At least Defender does that. You turn Defender off, and like one day you just see that you can't access your files anymore. They've been deleted or they're being blocked. And why? Because Defender is again active, and you're like, I turned it off like a week ago, and now it's back on. Like, why? Nobody knows. Just magic.
I miss Windows XP more than anything else, right?
I miss Windows 3. NT 3.5. Like that was probably the last good one. Or NT4.
I just want to make a point on this. You published an op-ed on your Medium blog. I'll put a link in the show description here that like separates the way Apple handled this and Microsoft handles this in a way where like you make a point that Siri feels like a companion you can call on, But when you use the Windows AI, and when I'm using this Chrome Gemini, for instance, it feels like it's overbearing. It's in your face. It's like, use me, pay for me. And then you also complain
Love
that
me.
combining Windows becoming more and more bloated. They want more telemetry, more these pre-installed apps that you mentioned, features that nobody asked for. Like, where are you doing your anti-malware research? On a Linux box?
I moved all my processes, all my projects that require working with malware in some kind of a safe environment. Everything runs on Linux nowadays, and a bit on my Mac. I
Because of
stopped doing
Windows
it
Defender?
because of Windows Defender and other mechanisms. I mean, other telemetry mechanisms in Windows, which I tried. I mean, one of the simple things I just had. Let's say I have a collection and I want to scan it like over and over with some Yara rules, something simple. And Defender just pops up like randomly from time to time, even if you disable or permanently disable it, and it keeps it tries to protect you. Like, it looks like you need protection. No, I don't need. I'm fine. No, but it
Please
looks
stop
like you really need
protecting me.
like, I'm gonna protect you even if you don't want to.
The shakedown.
Either way, yeah. So I was just venting my frustration with this blog, and it's not just me. I think a lot of other people feel the same way. They feel that with all these new additions like Recall, with the Copilot, it feel like just somebody watching everything you do over your shoulder, or like you're in your room, in your bedroom, watching a movie, and there's like Big Brother peeking through the door every 5 minutes, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Do you need help? Like, it's super, super stressful and intrusive. And I was thinking that, I understand, I totally understand that Microsoft, they need to hook you into their ecosystem. They need you to pay for cloud. They need you to pay for subscriptions, Office 365. They need you to pay for upgrades. They need you to pay for pretty much everything. And for that, they need to understand you better, meaning they need to collect telemetry. And also a very important component of this is, for a very long time, Windows was a driving force between the hardware industry. Whenever Microsoft released a new version of Windows, people bought
Triggered
new hardware.
refreshes, yeah?
Yeah, to good refresh. So actually, it drove a lot of hardware sales. So Microsoft needs to make Windows slower and slower and fancier, so people buy new hardware. And you see that with Apple as well, that people buy the new Macs because they have like faster CPUs, GPUs, AI, LLM, and so on. And what I was suggesting in my blog, and I'm going to just wrap up with that, was why doesn't Microsoft just split Windows in two? Make a Windows Classic for people who want something simple, without all this bloatware, without Skype, Teams, Office 365, Copilot, Defender, all that stuff. Something really simple. And
who's going to buy it?
Oh, I'm going to buy it. Like, I know a lot of people who are going to buy it and build on top of that, because it's a platform you can trust. You can trust that your data stays private on this platform, that Defender won't delete your files or send them to Microsoft. There won't be hidden telemetry that the German CN-CERT was warning, like just about, 10 years ago. They were just warning that Windows is sending a lot of telemetry. And
hey, Microsoft boasts about it in their sales pitches. We collect the most telemetry. We have the most signals.
There was a fantastic article which disappeared from the internet. It's crazy. It was basically a quote from one of Satya Nadella's talks. It was kind of a private Microsoft conference where he was bragging that we had to build this $2 billion data center to store all the telemetry. And that news snippet, that article actually disappeared from the internet. You can't find it anymore.
Ooh,
but I saw it. Like, I saw it. I don't think that article made too many people happy. And I was saying, like, look, Windows Classic on one hand and Windows AI on the other. And Windows AI, just put everything in it, like the liquid glass, Copilot, Magic, like 3D spinning windows. Just put everything into that. double the hardware requirements, make it run on minimum 32 gigs of RAM. And I'm sure there'll be people buying it. They'll say, like, I want the latest, greatest Windows with all these fancy features. But the problem is that Microsoft doesn't give you a choice, and everything begins with choice. You need to be able to choose between one or the other. The moment that you're just putting everyone in the same bucket and assuming that their data is your data and that you own them and your AI has a right to process what they do on their systems and learn their behavior and to predict how they're going to behave in the future, so you know how to trick them into buying your stuff, is not right in my book.
Right, but they'll give you private AI cloud compute, and then they'll give you all the security mechanisms that they put into Recall. That you remember David Weston came here and said you were going to get proof of presence, and it's all going to be secure. Let's just do it. It's all going to be for you because we're doing this private cloud, private AI compute and private cloud compute. This is the world Dan Geer wanted, though, right? This is the absence of monoculture where we have Windows, where Costin, you have an option. You can go do your work on Linux. You can do startups all over San Francisco are standardizing on Mac OS. I mean, I use Mac exclusively. And this is the world we wanted. This is the diversity we wanted.
I am drawn like every day. I use everything, obviously. I use Linux systems, I use Windows, I use Mac, and every day I find myself using the Mac more and more. It's just, I don't know, it's better from many points of view. It's probably this MacBook Pro M4 that I have at the moment, which wasn't that expensive. It was like half the price of the ThinkPad X1 Extreme that I have here on my right. It was just half the price of that. And it's faster. I can run LLMs locally, and they run absolutely fantastically. I can run games. I can do even, remember when I was doing this podcast, I was doing it from this Windows machine. I was like sluggish, overheating, interruptions. So I don't know. It just feels, that world is just falling behind, focusing on the wrong thing. And in respect to what Dan Geer was saying, it feels that we aren't necessarily going into this multicultural OS world. We are just still stuck in the same monoculture, which is now just of a different nature. It's a cloud plus AI. With everybody hooking you into some cloud with AI, we are back to square one. Everyone is again in the same monoculture, cloud plus AI.
Juanito calls it standardization, though, and this was going to fix the death of cyber.
I think it's important to really pick the terms well that we're sort of discussing here. The issue that Costin is facing, the issue that a lot of us are facing, is a lack of standardization, which is not the same as, standardization is not the same as a monoculture. It's not the same as everybody being stuck on the same thing. Standardization implies that we would be able to, a standardization of interfaces means that we're able to pick up our shit and go from one culture to another, from one ecosystem to another. And that's actually, I think the lack of standardization is the reason that monoculture can exist and can be as entrenched as it is. And really what we've got these days is 3 or 4 monocultures, and then you're basically stuck in one of these ecosystems. And once you're there, and they're mostly prevalent as far as your cloud provider.
You can't pick up your bat and ball and go into the other one, though.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And honestly, that is the ultimate sort of being held for ransom. Which is you built everything on your AWS stack, on your Azure stack, on your GCP stack, and you're going to migrate. Good luck. We'll see how that goes, right? It's a proven sort of impossibility to it. And we do have things like Kubernetes and Docker and whatever the fuck. It's just it's a much harder play. It takes a much greater development standard to be able to build things in a way that's cloud agnostic. But if you don't, which nobody does, then you're trapped. And you get in the fact that you're in this mechanism of rent extraction is what makes it terrifying. Honestly, Costin, I think that the conversation we're trying to have about operating systems, it has nowhere to land. I don't think Microsoft gives a flying fuck about Windows anymore, period. all they're thinking about is Azure and all of the AI plays. Like I watched this Dylan Patel from Semi Analysis, who I'm a big fan of, and Dwarkesh, who was has the Dwarkesh podcast. They had an interview with Satya Nadella, and Satya took them to see the data centers and all this shit. And if you listen to what I like about it is Dylan Patel understands a lot of the logistics, mechanics, numbers, investment that's going into the AI race, in a way where him and Dwarkesh were like really pushing Satya. Like they were really pushing back on him and saying, but what about this? But why did you leave this like data center allocation? But why didn't you spend on this? And why are you doing that? So Satya gave some answers that I think were incredibly telling. And what's interesting about Microsoft's strategy, as far as I can tell, is like, yeah, you have all these fucking like VP of AI and like all these random people trying to shove like modern Clippy up your ass and up into like everywhere that they can. And you're like, oh, I can't believe you don't want this. And it's like, yeah, fuck you. You know we don't want this. Nobody wants this. It's just for like PMs. Like this is like the FBI equivalent of like PMs trying to get a promotion, right? You just shove some shit out, call it, put out a press release and take your promo. And obviously nobody wants this shit. Moreover, look, the reason nobody wants this VP of AI at Microsoft is that you're putting out a shit product. People like AI stuff when it's well executed. I'm fucking thrilled about anti-gravity. I'm not excited about modern Clippy AI LLM thing in Excel that fucks up the accuracy of the things that I'm putting in Excel. You're kind of degrading your product. Maybe spend a little more time on it. But when you listen to how Satya talks about it, he's banking on the fact that all of these AI applications, whenever somebody figures out how to actually make this stuff really, really useful, that shit is going to have to live somewhere. You're going to need an execution ecosystem of some sort, which means you're going to need a virtual private server. You're going to need to have APIs and authentication and, auth tokens, different ways to network things together. You're going to need intermediate agents that know how to work Excel, that know how to work a database, that know how to actually make these things work natively, that you are going to connect all these things to. And what Satya said very plainly is almost like, yeah, let these fucking kids figure out this AI shit. They're going to need to run that stuff somewhere, and that's going to be run in Azure. And that's all he's playing at. Moreover, like if you listen closely, they were drilling him because apparently Microsoft gave up on some of the allocation they had for land and stuff for certain data centers. And other companies obviously rushed in to grab it. And he's like, yeah, we're going to wait for a little bit until the next generation, like 2 more generations of NVIDIA chips, because I don't know much about building data centers, but apparently the energy requirements and the cooling requirements are so specific that it's not like you can just rip out the chips and put out the new NVIDIA chip. You're going to have to rebuild a lot of how this shit works. So he's like, we're going to hold back a little bit and then we'll come back in. So like there is this notion of, timing is important here. A lot of people are burning a fuck ton of money trying to rush towards an uncertain future. And it's maybe not the worst idea for at least one of these giants to kind of pull their foot off the gas and see where everybody's going and then kind of try to rush to meet them with the advantages of a second mover. So I guess that's a really long-winded way of saying nobody's giving us our power user Windows XP version, 2025, right? Like it's just, they don't give a fuck about that anymore.
Can you turn off Xprotect on Mac? Whatever their AV engine is.
Can you tell if it's on?
No, I had this tweak in my brain around Costin and his Windows Defender shenanigans, and I'm wondering, working on Mac, they have an AV engine in the background as well. Is that an issue for you at all, or it just doesn't work that you don't even notice it?
I don't notice it because it doesn't find anything. So. Well, I think there's also a big difference. There's a big difference, which is that the most annoying thing about Defender is this real-time monitoring thingy, which slows down your systems and scans again keeps watch on everything you do and scans every file you open with their engines. So that's the
Isn't that
annoying
what
thing.
it's supposed to do?
Yeah, and that's why it's annoying. And you know what? In regards to what Juan was saying, I still think that Microsoft cares about Windows, and to me, Windows is to Microsoft like what Gmail is to Google. It's like their foundation for the core of their telemetry. Like it's a source of understanding user behavior and being able to predict how people react to, I don't know, new products, how they browse the internet, what they read about, emails they receive, things like that. So I think that for Google, probably Gmail is like the most important source of data they ever have. They're never gonna kill Gmail because it's just too important. Similarly, Microsoft will always need Windows for this purpose, and it probably took them some time to understand it, but I think they understand that very clearly now. And probably the biggest mistake was when they killed Windows Mobile, because now they don't have any source of telemetry from mobile platforms. And come to think of it, these Windows Mobile devices weren't that bad. They were like quite okay. So maybe something to see in the future is again the rebirth of
They've
Windows
tried.
Mobile.
They've
Lord.
They've
tried
tried.
several times. It's not gonna fucking happen, dude. It's just not. I don't know. I think it's funny, even as I think about your proposal, Kostin, like the idea of having like a classic Windows and a Windows full of like all the AI and like, but more importantly, like a Windows that's more like not in your control. There's a you don't have to look very far for that corollary. I think in many
Your
ways what we're
iPhone.
describing, yeah,
You think you own your iPhone?
It's the well, it's the difference between macOS and iOS. And I think for a long time there were a lot of us who were very fearful that Apple was going to continue to build up the iOS style ecosystem, which then became iPad OS, and it also included Watch OS, and then Vision OS, and so on. And that eventually some genius in Cupertino was going to have the idea of like, well, why do we need Mac OS at all, right? Like, and then you would essentially drive us all off a cliff. But that notion, I think, has kind of gone away. I hope in Cupertino. Um, but I think it kind of has to go away if you really consider the fact that like, if they did that, they couldn't build iOS because like what you're talking about is a power user OS and then a like I don't know what the right non-derogatory to a normie OS, like a normal people OS. My grandmother could use iPad OS, which was fascinating, right? You know, she was a smart woman, but she'd never used computers in her life. And, all of a sudden we gave her an iPad mini, I think in like, she was like 70 something. And this woman was like browsing Wikipedia and like watching like Chanel runway fashion shows. And we're like, how the fuck did
You
that
can go the other
happen,
way
right?
too. Put it in a 2-year-old's hands, and
Yeah.
within seconds they figure
Yeah, and
it
they'll
out, right?
buy all kinds of freemium shit and get addicted to like this like roulette of buying
The
stuff for
AI
you.
will
But
buy it for them now.
it will be great. But think about it, right? Like what we're talking about is a power user versus a normal user distinction. And the funny thing is that in the normal user OS, like iOS, iPad OS, you can't build things, you can't develop things, you can't tweak things. There is no Xcode for iOS. You can't have dynamic code, sort of being generated and moving things and executing things by definition. That's what keeps the thing safe. But that means you cannot develop iOS inside of iOS. So you have this kind of dichotomy and this requirement to like have some enabler for power users that you can't get away from. And I think what Microsoft is lacking is the fact that like they don't have that. Everybody is being shoved through the omnibus garbage truck version of the OS. And every version they're coming up with some harebrained bullshit scheme. I mean, think about like Windows 8. Think about like Vista was the first chance of like, fuck you, this is going to be awful and you're going to love it. And then Windows 8 was yet again the same shit, that like tablet-y version nobody asked for. Like, oh, you like tablets? Well, what if we had a tablet interface in your non-tablet device? You're gonna fucking love it. Windows 10. Oh, you want a subscription-based one? Don't worry, it's free until we say it's not, and then fuck you, you're already on it, right? Like the way to approach sort of consumer at Microsoft is one that's like very confused about who it's supposed to serve. Perhaps because you built the operating system that was in its heritage meant to work in every cloned IBM PC, and it was meant to just kind of serve everybody regardless of hardware, which was an interesting complexity that they were able to manage. But you can't look at customers the same way and say, well, you're all going to enjoy the same thing. And it turns out nobody enjoys this fucking thing at all.
Speaking of monocultures, we all woke up on Tuesday morning to nothing working. The internet was shut down. And if you're like me, you went, yay! And if you're like Costin, TLP Black goes down. Twitter goes down. Cloudflare had a big outage. And I mentioned the monoculture word because it's fascinating to me that a single company can have this kind of like real hold over the internet. Should be, considered critical infrastructure at this point. Two things stood out to me. One is just the sheer monoculture nature of Cloudflare today as it relates to the internet. And two, Cloudflare's reaction to it, which I spend a lot of time here shitting on companies for just terrible comms, terrible response. In this case, I think Cloudflare did an incredible job of coming out in the beginning. First of all, getting it fixed, figuring it out and getting it fixed, which is always a challenge for anyone. But the comms, the communication of clearly describing the who, what, why, where, how, properly documented, properly apologized. It just felt like a breath of fresh air in the midst of what we get used to, this legal bullshit language that this may have happened and we have no evidence of this and all this stuff. Shout out to Cloudflare for like setting the example of what this could look like. So when you hear me complaining, people, like this is the kind of blog you go to. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, Costin, they described a bug that caused this, a bug that caused it to overflow. What did we learn here about what happened?
I joked, if you remember, I joked before knowing the purpose or the reason of this crash. I joked that it was, just an array, like unsigned int of 200,000 and like a comment, 200,000 should be enough.
That was your joke prediction, yeah.
It was funny that it actually ended up being exactly that. For speed reasons and security, and this is ironic in a way, Cloudflare rewrote large parts of their infrastructure in Rust, which is generally a good thing, right? A modern programming language that has a lot of guardrails against buffer overflows and other mistakes. But nevertheless, it doesn't mean that it's foolproof. And I think that we learn more and more about Rust nowadays. And I really appreciate the fact that Cloudflare posted the code fragment that was responsible for this. And in particular, they were using this unwrap function, which, by the way, generally, this is considered a very bad practice in production systems. So what this means is if the previous operation fails for one reason or another, in this case, just it overwrites this predefined buffer, then you just crash the program, like you exit and crash the program. And in production systems, crashing the program and exiting is generally a bad practice. And in this particular case, what they were doing is they were trying to load this security filter list, which suddenly grew a bit too large, overrode the buffer. The program was crashing, was getting restarted, would try again, get restarted again over and over, and bringing the whole thing down. And of course, it would be good, I think, a good recommendation for Cloudflare would be to just go through all their source code, find if they use unwrap anywhere else, get rid of that, don't use it. I was wondering myself, is this like AI written code? Would a human write that particular code fragment? And I even asked Gemini if this is AI written or human, and actually Gemini suggested it's human written because it said like typically people use unwrap in during development or for debugging purposes, and then they remove it in production. So the AI wouldn't write this in production, but who knows? Who knows? To me, the code seemed pretty convoluted, and I was wondering still if they leverage some kind of AI to write that particular code fragment.
Interesting. One of the
I
things they
don't
made clear
think
was that
it's
this was not a cyber attack, not a cyber attack. So they got that clear out of the way. That was the first thing that came to people's minds on Tuesday when you come on and nothing is online and everything is affected. Juanito, sorry I interrupted. You were about to say something about AI generated.
no. I don't worry about it being AI generated or not. I don't think that ultimately really matters. But I think that with just to kind of heap praise on top of what you said, Ryan, for Cloudflare. Like you're focusing on the comms, and I think you're completely right. And I hope more companies can sort of realize how that builds trust, right? Like I'm looking at
Yeah, Oracle.
Okta
I mean, we've
or
spent a ton of time
everybody.
talking about this just recently with Oracle and some of
Well,
these companies that are
I,
just
I don't even think
butchering
Oracle's
the
like the
comms.
worst. I don't think it's
No,
they're
they're
the
not.
worst. I think, but what you're so what did they do right? They were honest and forthright about what was going on. They had a clear sense of what was happening, and they just kind of put it forth and said, "Look, this was our responsibility. This is what happened, and this is how we're fixing it." But I want to go beyond the comms and say that like part of what's such a good signal with the Cloudflare management of this is clearly you have such a technical stack that you were able to identify the problem within hours, right? Like part of the issue that you have with some of these comms is like the reason I don't want to come down on Oracle is
They
Oracle,
don't know.
the first, well, the first Oracle post was, we don't know, but we're figuring it out. And then they came back and they were like, okay, we figured out it was this. And that's not perfect, but they didn't lie, right? They didn't obfuscate. They didn't say, oh, nothing to see here, nothing's wrong, everybody's lying, because they didn't know. That said, I think there's the part of this where you go, hey, great leadership on the part of Cloudflare and just coming out and saying things. It builds trust in a situation where you normally would lose trust. But also look at the technical stack that they've got, that they could identify this problem as quickly as they did, and take care of it as quickly as they did. So we're just adding another sort of cherry on top of like, hey, well done, guys. And it's great because frankly, I think you're right. Cloudflare is essentially a form of critical infrastructure. A massive amount of the internet is entirely dependent on Cloudflare. They're not a bad steward of it, right? Like how much is DDoS still really a problem for most companies? Not
They've
really.
solved a
Like that's
lot of
just not.
problems. They've solved a
They've
lot of
they
irritants and a lot of
they've solved real fucking problems, and to then see them do it well because clearly their technical stack is appropriate, is up to par. Yeah, it's not perfect. Nobody's is perfect. They're gonna have problems. You're gonna have an unwrap in the wrong place, but like okay, it's good
But
enough.
it's
And
not. It
then to
doesn't
see
feel.
that
It doesn't feel healthy to be in this monoculture, though. It doesn't feel healthy to be so
they're
reliant on one company, where and this popped up
look,
in like the demonetization of folks and so on. They have to take
yeah.
certain political stances, and then we talk about the balkanization of tech when the world is reliant on a U.S. company. What if this was a company that had ownership stake somewhere? It just feels wrong. It feels icky to me to have like a single company
Yeah.
responsible for like me saying yay on Tuesday morning because nothing would work. It's weird.
Well, look, I think that you have to consider what is the outcome that we want, right? Like we're talking about wanting a globally distributed, reliable, instantaneous mechanism of communication. And that requires massive investment. It requires a certain technical standard. And the truth is that there is no mom and pop version of doing that, right? So you are going to have mega companies that do this sort of thing and that manage it, and they're willing to invest into it, and they're going to keep it up to a certain standard, and they're going to blah 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 blah. And frankly, I don't think like I think we would spend a lot more time being impressed by companies um, like um, like Google and Amazon and so on, if they had a more human understandable face, if they really could come out and say, look, we
Fair.
decided this, we thought it was a good idea. We hear that some of you don't like it. We're going to think about it. And like, and you can believe them when they say that. It's the sort of like faceless, smiling bastard bullshit that kind of like makes it so, which is also why, look, I was super harsh on the Amazon CISO and I don't think he deserved it, but it was like, it's very frustrating to see research and meaningful things that we care about get whitewashed through product marketing. And to
Mm-hmm.
have to do that with the face of somebody who's like, yeah, I don't, obviously this person had nothing to do with it. They're just the only spokesperson that's allowed to put their name out there under the corporate
Right.
brand. And like that's why I was so frustrated. What happens the next blog come around? Like, look, they're listening. They were responsive. David wrote us on Twitter. And then like what happens to the next blog? Yeah, it's under the CISO, but hey, credit to so and so and so and so who's Dishad and David whose work it was. And here's some IOCs. Like that's responsive. That makes you feel that there's a human being on the other side of
There's
this
a
thing.
human
And
being
you
behind there. Yeah.
and it's not just the vibe, it's like you feel better about the fact that we trust these people to essentially run the infrastructure of everything we rely on in our lives. So maybe, being responsive is an important thing. And that's something that, Microsoft hasn't quite figured out. It's something that Google has largely forgotten. They used to be really good at that, and that's gone. But with Cloudflare, I don't mind so much. Like we said, right? They've solved a mega problem of the internet. Now, what you're describing with the concerns about, this sort of like over reliance, and I think we're kind of overusing the term monoculture here, but like over reliance or monopoly in some ways of certain systems is essentially this feeling that there's nothing else. And by that I mean, right, like what does it mean to host your own thing, to run your own system,
Yeah.
to have decentralized access to this, that, and the other? And I think that's where what we're actually seeing is not a failure of these big companies. Those big companies are acting in their own interest. It's actually a failure of open source to have like the software commons lacks vision and it lacks ambition in a way. Like a lot of what folks are kind of caught up with as like open source and what they like about that world, it's very much about like get off my lawn. I run a couple of servers here and like I like my Linux in this particular flavor and get out of here. And it has nothing like it doesn't have the ambition of saying, actually what we need is like open rack servers. What we need is an open stack of hosting. What we need is a end-to-end version of being able to manage your own Slack-like, IRC-like corporate interface. That doesn't mean that
We need
everything
more
fucking
complexity in
sucks.
our life.
We need more complexity. We need more. No, I think we need more viable self-hosting. That doesn't mean that look, is it impossible for me to roll my own comms for my company instead of Slack? No, it's not impossible, but it's gonna fucking suck. It's gonna be insecure. It's not gonna be reliable. It's not gonna be safer, and everyone's gonna fucking hate me for it. And that's not a viable replacement. But technologically, there's no reason why you couldn't have your own Slack-like messenger that you deployed that's end-to-end encrypted, and it's just like a click button on AWS or on DigitalOcean or whatever, and like, look, boom, we're done. Yeah, does it have every feature that you never asked for? No, but you didn't need that shit in the first place. We just needed a place to communicate as a company. And like that is not a difficult thing. And yet the only thing anybody uses is Slack. And the worst version of hell is somebody force you to use Teams, right? Like but there's like a lack of an open alternative that is a legitimate alternative. And I think to that, what we're seeing is like, I think the open source ecosystem lacks vision and it lacks ambition as to what it means to be a viable alternative to what people actually need, as opposed to saying, well, if you wanted to roll it yourself, you could. You go, Sure, but that's not my full-time fucking job, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. And it's not just about a different flavor of Linux. It's about actually having like corporate appropriate support contracted things that are not mega corporation makes big decisions for me.
You mentioned them as good stewards. Good stewards as in created good products that worked and that saved the internet from a lot of things, bot-like activity, some of the DOS stuff. Good stewards as in they make good, like it feels like we're stuck with this dependence on Cloudflare. Documenting this good stewardship becomes like maybe the only thing we have left. When you say they're good stewards, what are you talking about?
I think I would say they're good stewards in that they're honest and sort of forthright in sort of what they say they're trying to do. Yeah, they've made some spicy. They've had some spicy takes in the past, but they're largely principled ones. And I think what you're describing as dependence is really it's not a sick dependence. It's not like they sold us a drug and now we're hooked on it. They're successful, right? They're successful because they solved the problem. So everybody wants to build on top of what they have done because they're solving a problem. And that's people wanting to depend on you because you are dependable, as opposed to people having to depend on you because you fucked them at a point of vulnerability, right? Like you were starting a company, you didn't know what to do, you needed to roll quickly, so you went and you got an Amazon, VPS to start yourself off, or a Google Cloud, CI/CD pipeline, whatever the fuck, because you just needed to roll, and you started to build your company, and you're just trying to make something work, and next thing you know, you're 18 months down the line, things are working, and all of a sudden you realize that you made a mistake on day 2 of your company, which is, I decided to rely on this thing, and now they're going to squeeze me for every penny. They're going to raise my prices. They're going to fuck me on data migration. If the data moves, they charge me. If the data computes, they charge me. If the data stores, they charge me. If the data deletes, they charge me. So like, you're just fucked, and you're fucked forever. And that's a kind of like drug pusher mentality to dependence that is, reprehensible. With Cloudflare, the fact that they go down and like half of the internet goes down, it's not because they have monopolized junctures of the internet or they're forcing you to have a product that you don't want. It's because they're so good at DDoS protection that everybody uses their shit. They're so good at easily deploying zero trust, this and that, easily deploying certificate pinning, easily deploying, all this sort of DNS record management. They're good at what they do. So yes, when they go down, a lot of shit goes down, but it's not like they made it so the internet could only work through their stuff. You can fall back to something else, right? I guess I'm saying Cloudflare, good in my book. I'm going into Kosten's book, and I'm Cloudflare checkmark.
Whoever the executive is there that tells the lawyers to go away, we are publishing this thing cleanly and documenting our response cleanly. Shout out to that guy. I
suspect it's going to have to be Prince. Like I think
CEO
it's
level.
What's the name of it? It's
got
to be
the
CEO.
From the CEO. Which is a significant point here, is that it has to be top down. This kind of real transparency has to be top down. It doesn't have to be in pledges and other bullshit. It has to be in real tangible things that comes from the very top.
Corporate lawyers, apart from being an only recent addition to corporate ecosystems, are an advisory capacity. Corporate lawyers do not make decisions. They tell the leadership what they think that should be happening, and then the leadership gets to make a choice. You can hide behind your bureaucratic bullshit all you want, but at the end of the day, your
leaders
bullshit
love the
choice,
lawyers there to hide behind, by the way.
Of course, because leaders like to walk into a room and go, the vision of the future, everything's perfect, we're here to make everyone happier. And then they and if somebody asks like, hey, can we have a living wage? And they go, absolutely, check in with the lawyer. The lawyer walks out and goes, no, fuck these people. And they go, oh, sorry, the lawyer said we can't do that. It's like, no, you can, you just chose not to, right? It's just hiding behind.
Speaking of lawyers, Denis Obrezko, a 35-year-old Russian national, was arrested on November 6th in the Talang district of Phuket, Thailand, during a joint operation between the Royal Thai Police and the FBI. Denis will need a lawyer because he will need a lawyer.
I was
What a
wondering what's
fucking
the
great
connection.
transition. This man's gonna need a lawyer.
Dennis,
But he's gonna need a real lawyer, not a
Like
corporate
a real,
lawyer.
no, yeah,
a real
he needs a
lawyer.
good one. He needs a good one.
two things. Dennis was arrested there and linked to Void Blizzard, which we also track as Laundry Bear or Storm 1099, a Kremlin-aligned group, and APT 28. So we're starting to see guys getting picked up. One. Two, the second thing here is apparently this guy was ex-Kaspersky. Between 2017 and 2019, he worked at Kaspersky for a bit. The person that shared this link with me says, hey, by the way, this is not the first intelligent guy that's been at Kaspersky. Yeah, they just kind of threw it in my face. Costin, you know this guy at all?
No, sir.
Did you guys hang out at any point? Have you guys hung out? Like,
I have no proof whatsoever he worked for Kaspersky or not. I did look a bit into this, and there was actually a big Russia tax information leak earlier this year. And he does appear in there. The birthday kind of matches. There's his phone number, but there's no email for him, though. There's like his insurance number, like health insurance number. It does appear in there, but I can't find any kind of email address listed for him. And yeah, there is this article where he says that he worked at Kaspersky between 2017 and 2019, but like I have never seen any kind of proof, which doesn't mean he didn't work. It's just that I've never heard this name before. For me, it's a kind of a new name. And I think you said that also APT28, and I think it's important to say that these guys, Void Blizzard, Laundry Bear, and remember we cover Laundry Bear, which is it the Dutch name?
The
if
Dutch,
I'm not
yeah,
mistaken?
the Dutch paper on Laundry Bear, correct.
Laundry Bear. They are not the same as APT28. However, an APT28 operator was arrested in the same place of Phuket, Thailand. Was it also the Talang district? I think yes, it was in the same district basically. Just maybe a month ago, or just maybe less than a month ago. So it seems to be open hunting season on Russian APT operators in Thailand. I know a lot of Russians have immigrated or flew to Thailand after the war started and the the recruitment, the military recruitment operations began, the raids began in the Moscow clubs. And it's interesting that now the FBI and the Royal Thai Police are hunting these guys in Thailand. So it seems that Thailand is no longer a safe haven for them.
It used to be, right? It used to be they could travel freely there, and that's like one of the big vacation destinations for some of these guys.
Yeah, or like for conferences. Or for conferences, like good question. Yeah, I think was it in Thailand this year as well, or am I mistaken?
I think so. Yeah,
I think it was in Thailand as well. Yeah.
Yeah, SAS was in Thailand 2 weeks ago. Dennis Obresko, he's currently detained and pending extradition to the United States. We've talked about this in the podcast previously when we would like just drop sanctions against random names. We were like, why waste all this bureaucratic energy behind this thing? Like, this is why. Eventually they travel. Eventually at some point you get a chance to get a shot at one or two of these guys. Anything to add to this story, Juanito?
I mean, I think the heartache really is, so you mentioned sort of the sanction stuff and we go, why? It's like the heartache is really that it's most effective when you don't let them know that they're, you've got sort of a sealed indictment, you wait, they show up in Thailand and then you fucking disappear them. Presumably there's like, so I'm curious what the play is at this point, right? Like, because we have such a weird relationship with Russia as an enemy. Or as a, whatever the fuck you want to call them. So the intel value of this is where I would normally be really curious, right? Like you pull this guy over, you bring them to the US, you put them in a pretty shit situation and you go, okay, talk. And I would have trusted that like 2 or 3 years ago, we would have made hay of whatever it is that came out of that. What happens now? Like, do we just get the dude here and then like the next time there's some summit with the Russians, like we just kind of trade them in for some, like now, I guess what happens now is they bring these, APT operators over here. We hold them for 6 months and then the Russians arrest a basketball player or a journalist of the New York Times or whomever for looking
And the
sideways.
cycle repeats itself.
And then we like trade them back, right? So you just kind of hold them as chips for like random exchanges. Does that mean there's no point to this? No, I think it's great. I'm glad we're doing it. And for anybody who was arguing that like this US government is not interested in, enforcing things with the Russians anymore, this makes it look like that's very much not true. So I'm happy to see that. We need to put some consequences to it to some degree. Now, if this dude is an APT operator, at what part, and this sort of brings us full circle with the whole Dimitri discussion earlier, right? If this dude's an APT operator, we're saying he's like a full-on GRU operator and whatever, you just arrested somebody who was part of like a proper gov operation, like part full-on of the government. Whoa. Every person who lives out here in Maryland and Virginia, you guys like done traveling to anywhere that has extradition to Russia or China? Or my point with these things is like, I think I'm not saying we shouldn't take steps forward. Like that's what causes a great deal of paralysis. Like we should try this. We should definitely do this and see what the right mechanisms are. At the same time, we need to be cognizant of it's not too far away from them then saying, the Chinese are complaining about us seizing Bitcoin or whatever, in presumably in some kind of attack. Okay, every NSA operator, like I don't know what countries extradite people to China. Chances are these people weren't going to China, Macau, but like there's a different discussion to be had here about like making gov players poachable targets in this way. I don't know.
I got a couple of APT reports. Positive Technologies reporting on Striking Panda, a Chinese APT, Chinese Nexus APT that Positive Technologies says has been hitting Russia's IT and government adjacent integrators. So we have Positive Technologies reporting on Chinese hitting Russians. We have ESET publishing on a campaign called Plush Demon, compromising network devices, routers, and adversary in the middle attacks. Pretty interesting network implant being used over there. And then a third one from SecurityScorecard documenting Operation WRT Hug. A Chinese state sponsored actor.
Are we taking SecurityScorecard seriously now? Like, there's
a paper here. There's a paper here with CVEs and IOCs talking about tens of thousands of ASUS routers in a network. So there's like the usual batch of APT reports. Anything here stand out to you, Costin? When you look at these three, I want to bundle them in because we are starting to run out of time.
Oh, hard to bundle them in, but I think each one of these papers, blogs you mentioned, has merit and there's value in there. Positive Technologies, I like the fact, maybe a bit unusual, but in the IOX section, they allow you to download that as an XLS file. Ooh. It's not very often that you see that, but
what does that help you with?
That's nice. Why does it help you? Because I hate scraping hashes from HTML pages, sometimes in image formats, like the wrapping in the table. Sometimes the MD5s, the SHA-1s get wrapped in pieces. And I was like, whoa, this is unusual. These XLS files are unusual. Maybe I don't remember seeing them before. People typically
you
have
get nervous
CSV
downloading
files.
Documents, though?
No exploit in there? No.
Now you ask. Too late. I don't know. Do as you choose. You choose what to trust, and make sure you have lockdown mode enabled on your Windows machine. Oh wait, you don't have lockdown mode. So
it's okay.
Yeah,
Defender will defend you whether you like it or not.
I thought it was like a good thorough overview of all these different malware families that APT31 or somebody else leveraging them has been using to hit Russia over the past years. For Plush Demon, I also thought it's quite a good, interesting reports because of this network malware that they're using. There's actually different malware families. that they use on different platforms. I wrote the other rules. I played a bit with the samples that are available on VirusTotal actually from the ESET report. So do go read about Plush Demon. By the way, the
Anything
threat
ESET
actor,
puts out is great.
yeah, and this threat actor, by the way, ESET has another report about the Plush Demon, which they published in January or February of this year. And I put together like an actor card, like an actor card for Plush Demon, because there's no other known names. I don't think that there's any other aptXX or Panda or whatever for Plush Demon. So this is perhaps just like something different. It's not associated with any other known threat actors. So please correct me if I'm mistaken, our dear listeners. As for a security scorecard, I like the fact that it's yet another of these orb papers. So like super hot topic at the moment. Everyone is interested in orbs. I can tell you from the point of view of our
Remind
customers.
the audience on what an orb is.
Operational relay boxes, which is kind of an US Five Eyes intelligence term for these networks they've been building since 2010 by hacking into people's home routers and whatever, just using them to build their own Tor-like networks. And obviously now this technique is being used by China, by Russia, pretty much everybody wants to use it. And it's a very hot topic. Like everybody wants to know how to identify orbs, how to track them. And it's always very good to see new papers on orb networks, in particular this one targeting ASUS routers. I thought it was very interesting.
We have to assume there's a lot of good guys sitting on those boxes monitoring as well, too, right? I mean, this is the honeypotting things that we talked about previously, right?
Some of them.
Austin is giving me the look.
Yeah. I can't talk about this because I mean there's people out there doing some amazing orb networks research. My colleague in TLP Black, Kurt, doing some really amazing research, and I think he actually presented with Vitaly last year at TAS, the Team T5 Analyst Summit Conference, which, by the way, is coming up in December this year as well. It's a very, very cool conference, Team T5.
In Taiwan.
Really awesome. In Taiwan, correct, in Taipei. So do look into that if you're interested into Chinese APTs. This is the event at the end of the year that you want to not miss.
Is it in English? The entire conference is in English?
It is in English, absolutely. And good.
You want to go to
stuff.
Taipei, bro?
No, bro. It's too far. ESET, I just want to go back to
from Taipei.
Want to go back to the ESET Plush Demon report. This DNS hijacking of software updates. They describe an edge stepper hijacking DNS queries specifically related to software updates for popular Chinese applications. They listed the applications, and then redirecting these requests to attacker control servers. Is that a common thing being used? Every time I see software updates being compromised or manipulated, my hackles go up. Can you talk a little bit about what this edge stepper is doing and how common is this in these types of campaigns?
This is this is probably the main topic of their initial report published at the beginning of the year.
Oh, the first one.
Yeah, they cover like how this worked through a supply chain attack, and I would say that it's not the only group that leverages this kind of techniques. There was a pretty cool presentation from Itochu at where was it? I think it was actually presented at several conferences last year, but me personally, I saw it in Taiwan last year in May, if I'm not mistaken.
The keynote thing that you did there at one of those hacking the, what was it?
Yeah, HitCon.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there was a very good presentation from Itochu about groups doing exactly this kind of things. I think they were talking also about different groups as well as using other very cool techniques. So this is maybe not necessarily rare. It's not necessarily rare, but it seems to be especially visible and especially happening with these kind of rare software packages that they have some kind of limited distribution in certain countries, be it, I don't know, Japan or South Korea, or even in China or Taiwan, where leveraging something like this, the access that supply chain attack provides, it gets you interesting targets. It gets you into a lot of interesting places.
According to ESET, Plush Demon has been seen in the US, East Asia, and New Zealand, with a focus on cyber espionage against sectors like manufacturing, education, and automotive. So, pretty interesting report. Want to anything to add to any of these three?
No, I haven't had a chance to kind of go through them the way that I would
All
want
good.
to. I definitely want to check out the ESET one in particular, just because you know I'm a big fan. Anytime they put anything out, they've got good stuff. And like I said, I wasn't just trying to shit on Security Scorecard for its own sake, but like they've published a lot of really bad stuff in the recent past, and it tends to be the kind of ambulance chasing that like just it's at the point where like anything they put out, I think I assume is bullshit until proven otherwise. And if that's
Fair
not the
enough.
case anymore, like
That's a
if that's
good
not the
default
case
position to
anymore,
have.
I just like it depends on the company, right? Like you build up like it's everything we were discussing with Cloudflare, right? You build up a certain amount of trust, and that takes you a long way. And you can also build a deficit of trust. And I think if Security Scorecard is doing real research now, great. I want to kind of, but I'm still at a point of like trust deficit where I want to hear from somebody else that like, you know, it
Hold
is
them to a higher
actually worth
standard. I
it.
agree with you.
It also happens that with orbs, like even the best meaning people make mistakes. It's very easy, right? Like you've got a ton of residential proxies, you've got a ton of like cloud servers or like things that are being abused. It's why they use these orb networks, right? It's hard to track, it's hard to disambiguate, and people make mistakes. So this is one of those areas where I'm not defaulting to just putting them down, but I kind of want to hear from somebody who knows what they're talking about, saying like, is this actually good or not?
What you did last week was you defaulted to putting down the CN-CERT when they claimed that the US
Dude,
government stole their billions
We need to
in
apologize. We need
I
to
was
in
waiting.
apologize.
magic
I was
money,
waiting.
Bitcoin.
I
You
was
see how I
gonna
stitched
come
it
and
all together
like,
there?
yeah, I see you. I was gonna come and sort of lay myself flat for the mistake of not believing in our you know dear Chinese overlords with this Lubian situation. So I've got
So
to eat crow.
Costin, remind the audience, last week we discussed this based on that Bloomberg piece where CN-CERT issued a public claim that the US government basically stole these funds. Remind the audience what these funds was, provide a little bit of background, and how and you believe the Chinese are actually accurate here.
Yeah, and I'll be the first one to say that we were wrong. We were wrong last week when we didn't
Oh,
believe the Chinese,
look at you
and
fact
Didn't
checking.
believe the Chinese.
we
Yeah.
we fact checked ourselves. Yeah, so I went back through the report, and although it seems a bit kind of unbelievable, incredible, it would appear that they are right. And what this report was actually claiming is that this famous Lubian hack, which stole like 127,000 bitcoins from this mining pool, Chinese mining pool, was orchestrated by the US government. And although it seems a bit incredible, it seems to be right, because even the numbers and the wallet, the accounts, they actually correspond to the actual indictment for this chairman of the Prince Group, this Cambodian forced labor scam compounds scheme. And they actually allege that they were using this mining pool to launder some of the funds. So the US government just proceeded to seize these funds per indictment, while the Chinese CERT, they're claiming that the US government stole the funds. So it's maybe just different perspectives. The US government says we seized the funds, and the Chinese say you stole the funds.
And there is a wallet marked US government with the funds sitting there, right?
But
Well,
Arkham
yeah,
is marking it, right?
Right.
correct. Arkham is marking the funds, but like I said, the amounts correspond. This is what the indictment says. The amounts are the same. The wallets are the same. So it does look like they were seized. There is, by the way, there is a discrepancy of 1 Bitcoin, and I don't know, like if it's an error somewhere.
The tip.
Like what happened? Yeah, is that like the tip for the operation, or whoever took the funds like lost a Bitcoin? There is just 1 Bitcoin discrepancy between what Lubian claims it was stolen and what the indictment says it was seized. So I was wondering what's going on with that 1 Bitcoin, which unfortunately, like nowadays, the Bitcoin is kind of collapsing, going down, and the value is no longer what it used to. The Bitcoin is like going down, so it's less and less, but nevertheless, 1 Bitcoin.
How did they manage to grab the funds?
This is probably the most fascinating topic, in my opinion. The Chinese are alleging that the Bitcoin wallets that Lubian was using, they were built on top of a weak random number generator, and they were using this weak Mersenne Twister random number generator, which had only 32 bits of entropy. And actually, there were a bunch of other attacks that exploited this kind of weak random number generators. So to me, the main question would be, how did the attackers know that Lubian was using this particular weak algorithm for their wallets?
That's where the 1 Bitcoin went.
Yeah, so did they actually, I don't know, somehow target Lubian? Well, with a typical intrusion, they got the source code, and then they saw, so they're using this weak algorithm, and we can actually take the funds by finding the exact random numbers that were used to generate the wallet. So this is like a fascinating topic, because in theory, anyone who knew that they were using this algorithm and exactly how they were using the implementation
could have swiped
be
these
able
billions of
to
dollars.
But that's a key element here, that you need to know that they are using this, and you need to know the exact implementation, because you can like implement this Mersenne Twister algorithm in many different ways to generate 128 to 156 bits of entropy. So yeah, it depends how you implement it, and you need to know exactly in order to be able to steal the funds.
Juanito, who in the US government would have this ability?
Well, not knowing how this was done, like you've got your obvious ones, but what makes this sort of odd, right, is you're talking about, if it's a seizure, you're talking about a law enforcement action. And what makes, okay, so let's parse some of this out, right? I was completely dismissive of the Chinese and said this was a really stupid thing for them to say. And I was obviously wrong. I'm not walking back the fact that I was obviously wrong.
That's
what
the
I will
clip
say
right
is,
there.
yeah, that's it. That's it. Just I was wrong. It's like just keep replaying that over and over again.
One admits he was wrong.
Oh, please! I have no problem admitting. Like I will do this all day. But
give me the thumbnail.
Yeah, right. No, I was obviously wrong. There was room. What I will say is there was a lot of room for me to be wrong when you don't substantiate your claims, and that's always a discussion we've had with a lot of government reports about attribution, about cyber attacks, about whatever, and like even like circling back to Dimitri's point about like, oh, well, when you have attribution, just use it. I agree to some degree. However, a lot of those attribution statements, especially the government ones, a lot of the time they'll fall entirely on authority-based arguments. Well, why do we know it's the Russians? Well, because the British government said it's the Russians. And you go, well, we trust the British government, so we'll say it's the Russians. But we don't know why they said that. And the problem is that sometimes you have entirely political statements, sometimes you have vibes-based statements, and then sometimes you have properly substantiated intel statements. And we can't tell the difference between those. And there are situations where there's been a certain amount of doubt and a certain amount of confusion with something like Wellmess, for example, back in the day. And then the truth is that anywhere where you don't show your work, when you don't show the basis for your statements, we get into this sort of shitty situation of, do you trust the person that said it? Do you trust that they're being rigorous enough about it? And we can't verify their claims. If the Chinese had really wanted to stick it to the US, if they had wanted to like kind of punch the US in the mouth, they would have walked out with a full fucking incident response report that says, look at how they did it, and like, this is why we say it's them. And US, what do you have to say for yourself? You've just committed a bank heist like the North Koreans would do, right? And they could have hung that shit around the US all day long. They didn't do it, so then you get a dumb oaf like myself being like, oh, you idiots, you just kind of made this shit up. Now, moving beyond that to what is actually happening here, to your question, Ryan, like, I don't know who handles this kind of operation, right? Like, I would expect the FBI to be involved, and I would expect that the FBI wouldn't have the talent to do this. So is this like an external contractor that did an operation, and then, you know, they were doing like an otherwise...
This might be one of your legitimate offensive security firms, right?
I'm saying, like, did somebody get authorization to do an OIA and otherwise illegal action and seize this stuff? Was this somebody in the middle who just so happened to manage the infrastructure who could opportunistically pick this up? Was this, if it is a third-party contractor, well, the Chinese don't consider this a legitimate seizure. You guys better not travel to Thailand or wherever the fuck else, right? Like, you're done there. But this is the kind of thing where, if we're going to keep doing this, which I'm not saying I'm against, right? If you've legitimately got an indictment and you're saying that these are criminal proceeds, then please, by all means, go and pick them up and put them somewhere. But this is, like we were saying earlier, law enforcement actions require greater transparency. We can't get used to this idea that like cyber attacks are by default covert, and therefore it's perfectly acceptable that covertness will rule. You can't do that in law enforcement. You need to say why and how and where and when and how much and who got it and where it's going and why it's doing it and how it's going to be used. And look, if this is a new thing the US is doing, I'm all fucking for it. If you want to legitimize magic money, you want to push back against people like me and Ryan who think that magic money is all bullshit and it's just like a mechanism for crime, then you need to, like, somebody should be out there doing some level of extraordinary enforcement and making this real and making it legitimate and giving consumer protections some mechanism of legitimacy. Because otherwise, like, it's the Wild West, and that's what's been playing. But this isn't the way to do it. Quietly magicking that shit out of somewhere and putting it somewhere else and not telling anybody what's going to happen with it, where it's going to go, why or how. And that was my statement, was like, if the US did it, I would expect us to come out and say it. And if we're not, I would expect people in the US to be the first ones to go, hey, what the fuck was that? And let me be one of those people and say, hey, not only was I wrong in coming down on the Chinese, but now I'm looking at the US and going, guys, like, what the fuck are we doing? If this is something new we're doing, I love it, but what are we doing? How are we doing it? Where is it going? What's the point, right?
What happens to this $13 billion worth of Bitcoin? It might be 12 billion today, like you mentioned. Bitcoin prices are dropping. What happens to...
They'll probably go fund this national crypto reserve that Trump was actually saying that it will be exclusively funded through this kind of seizures by seizing money from criminals. So, yeah, it's quite possible to go that direction. And I wonder, actually, once you start doing this, I mean, there's a lot of criminals out there. Like your national crypto reserve could grow very fast if somebody puts some, let's say, direction and dedication and power into this. Your country could get very rich.
Dude, but we're just not giving it back. Like, when we say criminal, right? That was stolen from somebody. Like, if you got it back, that's great. You're not gonna give it back to the people it was stolen from.
Don't even start. Like they there used to be
What
an
the fuck?
exchange called BTCE back in the days, which I think the FBI took down, and they just seized all the bitcoins there. And I know people like in Romania who used to have like a 0.0001 Bitcoin in there, and they never got it back from the FBI. So from their point of view, their Bitcoins were stolen by the FBI. So I don't think that anyone will get those back. Like they will probably just go and fund the crypto reserve.
Ay. That's a world I'll never understand. I will never understand. I'm just maybe way too old. Let's close the
Look,
show with some shout outs.
I was gonna say just one last statement on that closing. The whole point of the law and living outside the law is that you're not protected by it. What libertarians fail to tell people is that, yes, there's a lot of ways in which you can hate regulatory regimes and all that shit, but the law protects you as much as it holds you down. And you're not hiding shit under your mattress. The internet is owned by a bunch of other people. You're putting things in a bunch of different places, and there are people who are super powered in relation to any old person or any old hedge fund or any old whatever. You're living in the Wild West. There's nobody there to protect you, and that goes in every direction. It's scams, it's rug pulls, but it's also like the day that you want to go spend your money, maybe your money's not worth anything, or maybe your money's not there. And people need to, like, honestly, I think all of the small time out of pocket investors and people who are like into crypto, who are putting their own money in, I mean, you have brass balls, and I don't know
There's
if
always
it's
a
like,
sucker at the table.
but that's my point. Like, I don't know how you can look at yourself and have stability and comfort in any capacity when you are an ant, and there's literal fucking 400-story sized giants fighting it out, and you're just kind of rolling around with your $20,000 or $200,000 worth of whatever bullshit Monero token. And you leave Andrew out of this.
Andrew McPherson is pulling out his
he's just like fucking
mohawk
pissed.
now. It's like, these motherfuckers don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
He's gonna scalp himself. No, but dude, my point is, you know how I feel about what's happening in this crypto space. It is like the flash market, the flash crash, and like dark markets of, like, you know, the early high frequency trading that was happening in the stock market. When you let a bunch of institutional investors fuck around in a dark space where nobody can see them, crazy, insane, selfish, short-sighted shit happens. And if it was 200,000 or 200 million, I wouldn't care. But there's like more than $1 trillion that's being swished around in this place where nobody can see. And money laundering and all that is the least of our concerns, because when that money vanishes or somebody does something truly catastrophic, that is not going to remain in this, you know, phantom zone parallel world of crypto. It's going to swish out and be a tsunami on the actual real world economy, the same way it happened with the housing crisis and CDOs and all this other stuff. Whenever you let institutional investors fuck around at scale with nobody watching, eventually somebody loses big time, and that loss is going to reverberate through the rest of the global economy.
And that is usually the sucker at the table.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be great. We're gonna fucking love it.
All right, let's close the show with some shout-outs. We're just over 2 hours and 10 minutes in. We're halfway to 4 hours, guys. We'll get there eventually.
So close.
I'm working on it, but I really got to go to the bathroom.
You're going to start peeing in bottles, bro, or something. I need you to, like, figure this out.
While you guys think about your shout-outs, I want to say thank you to Material Security, our official sponsor for this show. If you're listening now, you know that Material Sponsor is our key sponsor for this month. Material Security does protection for Google Workspace specific. They excel at Gmail, Google Workspace protection, but also any sort of cloud email box, any sort of cloud Business protection, check out material.security. We have a couple of CFPs that are still open, Costin.
Well, shout outs to our good friend Pasquale and our good friend Bartek, who are announcing PivotCon. And I noticed that you are wearing a PivotCon hoodie, Ryan.
Look at
Thanks
that.
to
Shout outs to our
Pasquale for
good
the shirt.
friends. PivotCon, one of my favorite conferences, and will be in Malaga, Spain again, 2026, May 6 to 8. So do try to apply if you can make it. Again, it's one of the best threat intelligence conferences out there, and if you can submit something, that's even better.
Juanito, you go out to PivotCon. This is like the European version of LabsCon, right? It's the same type of content, the same type of focus.
Yep, it's one of our sister conferences, unintentionally, unofficially, right? But like our friend, PivotCon spawns from LabsCon fam, and you see some crossover, but obviously you've got a lot more of like our European friends there. It was a phenomenal conference last year, and great talks, much more closed circle, a lot of things that just don't go public. You had some nice workshops. Overall, I think we're having a much, much better time with these private, small time conferences, and purposefully so. So a lot of support for these guys, and I'm really looking forward to what ends up in that agenda, because all the real research is being dropped in these small spaces now.
Shout out to Jordan as well, putting together ReverseCon. That's happening in Orlando in March 5th to 7th. I saw a notice from the Reverse folks that the CFP has been extended. It's more of a reverse engineering conference, more like a recon type conference. Juanito, you and I were out there last year. I can highly recommend Reverse as well as someplace to consider submitting and to consider attending as well. So take a look out for that.
Got some cool trainings. I think it's like the one place that you can count on to have good trainings for reverse engineering, which I think is getting harder and harder to find, right? Like Recon's been kind of waning, and Reverse is supposed to be the replacement for good reason there.
Anything else? Any last shout outs?
Also, by the way, let's not forget the Caro workshop taking place in Innsbruck in Europe. So for the folks who are still into old school malware, like all that stuff, I'll have a speech actually there, speaking together with our good friend Mr. Marco on AI honeypots.
Nice.
It's February 25th to February 27th in Innsbruck. You can check their website at caro2026.org.
Wow, look at you in your old school. I don't even remember Caro.
So old school. Yeah, I forgot about it. I don't think I ever spoke at Caro.
Any last minute shout outs from you, Juanito?
You took it from me. My shout out was going to be apologizing to the Chinese. So I think that's,
apologize again.
We're there. Sorry, China. So my bad. You guys, you were right on this one. You were trying to harbor criminal proceeds, and I didn't believe you. But yeah, showing your work, great times. And then honestly, let me shill for 35 seconds. Google's been super behind in all the model stuff, but this Gemini 3 release, it punched way above its weight, doing it with anti-gravity as like a product that people can download on day one and get to use Gemini 3 for free and see its power. Genius move, well played, proper. Like whomever out there has figured out that you could productize things effectively. Very proud of you guys. This is, I think, a landmark moment in that I think anybody that downloads anti-gravity and tries just saying, hey, build me a website or whatever the fuck, is going to see the power of what this AI stuff can do. And I think that that's been something that a lot of the other companies have just failed to really properly convince people. Like, why is this the future? Well, look, you don't know how to do a goddamn thing on a computer, and you ask it to do something that was really, really hard that you might pay people money for or whatever, and it does it for you. And I think that's where you can sort of see the promise of it. So shout out to DeepMind and to everybody at Google who kind of got their act together on this one. Come up with a reasonable, predictable pricing subscription model of some sort so that we're all stop being so confused about how to pay you money for your offerings. And then, enjoy laughing all the way to the fucking bank, because like they've done something good there.
And to those same people, how do I get this Gemini button shit out to my Chrome browser? And there's
Have you heard about
spinning.
Firefox?
Blue light spinning. Firefox is too old. That's our show for this week, folks. Have a great weekend. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll catch you next week. We will have a special Thanksgiving episode next week, right?
Sure.
Yes, and very important. Don't forget today, don't forget to watch The Age of Disclosure on Amazon Prime.
What is that?
That is like the only thing that matters in my world. Like,
fuck is this? Oh, is this some alien shit? Is this like your UFO conspiracy theory?
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Wait. On that note, if we're giving people recommendations, go read or listen to Bullshit Jobs.
Bullshit Jobs. What is it?
It's an excellent book. About kind of what's happened to all this knowledge work culture that's really created a flying fuck ton of middle management, corporate lawyers, and a bunch of risk-averse bullshit that we're all dealing with. If there's something that the AI age is going to destroy, it's hopefully that like Soviet-style bureaucracy we have created for ourselves. So yeah, go read or listen to Bullshit Jobs, and we can have a discussion. Bullshit job is a job that if it disappears tomorrow, nobody would know. 1. And 2, it would leave the world in a better place. So. It's a job the person performing the job cannot justify the need for. Peace out, everyone. Good night.
Bye.